In recent years, Borussia Dortmund have forged themselves a bit of a reputation for being a talent development factory. Through brilliant scouting and shrewd negotiating, they spotted and developed the talents of Christian Pulisic, Ousmane Dembele, Erling Haaland, Jadon Sancho, Jude Bellingham, and now Jamie Bino Gittens. In this rebuild, we're going to look to continue the trend as we rebuild Dortmund using youth transfers only. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. A big thank you for coming back and joining me on another video right here on YouTube. Today I'm going to be kicking off a brand new series. As you might have been able to tell from the intro, we're going to be taking the hot seat at the Signal Iduna Park in front of the yellow wall. Past couple of years, Borussia Dortmund have got themselves a bit of a reputation for spotting a talent, developing it, and in this series we're going to look to continue that trend as we rebuild Dortmund using youth players only. Here we go then, we have fired up a brand new save game in FM23, put ourselves in charge at the Signal Iduna Park, the home of the Yellow Wall, and we are now in charge at Borussia Dortmund. Now obviously Borussia Dortmund are a massive club, a name that is probably known throughout the footballing world, but in case you've been living on another planet for 20 years or simply aren't familiar with them, we're just going to have a quick run through their info page. We're also going to have a little look at their squad and what their best starting 11 might be, just to give away also what the tactic we're going to play is. And then we're going to jump forwards to the end of the first season. So let's run through this information page then. In the top left hand corner, you can see their reputation is worldwide. Their finances are secure. Their training and youth facilities both mark up as superb. Junior coaching is good on 3 stars. They have excellent youth recruitment. Their estimated value is £513 million. They have a squad personality that is determined, and their year of founding was 1909. Looking at the bottom of the screen, you can see that they have Marco Reus at the club. He's both their club captain and their key player. If we have a little look at the player himself, you can see formerly representing Borussia Mönchengladbach, but he has been at Dortmund for such a long time, he will go down as one of the Dortmund greats. Looking at the player himself, 33 years old, probably coming to the end of his career now, but he's still an elite attacking midfielder according to his media description, can play off either wing, can also be a makeshift striker, which I don't think I've seen him play too often, but he obviously can jump in if we need him. Stats are still brilliant for his age. He has things like technique of 16, off the ball of 18, determination of 18, finishing, first touch, free kick taking. Marco Reus is a club legend. Moving on, as I said, he also goes down as a key player, but I would actually argue that that is now Jude Bellingham. Jude Bellingham is getting to a point both in the game and in real life where he's such an influential player. I remember watching him play for Dortmund in the Champions League against Manchester City, and he absolutely bossed one of the best Premier League teams that probably are ever going to be, and I think it's his time to step up and shine. I think he is a key player at the club. In terms of their hot prospect, though, it's a name that everybody will recognise in Football Manager. He's the player that was so young once that they couldn't get the licence to put him in the game until his parents gave permission. He's Youssoufa Moukoko, 17 years old still, valued at 42 to 52 million pounds. He recently was called up in real life to the German full team for the World Cup. He's a player that I think is going to have a massive career ahead of him. When you look at his stats, he's a ball of raw talent that we're going to look to develop as we go along. 16 technique, 16 finishing, 16 dribbling, acceleration, agility, pace of 15, natural fitness of 15. I think he has everything that we need to be harnessing his powers as a world-class footballer. Plays as a striker, can also play off of the left wing and the right wing, can also play behind the striker, but I think for the duration of this we are probably just going to use him as our striker at the head of our tactic. Going back then, just round this off, let's have a little look at what they have done in terms of their honours list. So, Champions League winners in 1997, Bundesliga winners 8 times, seems to come in clusters for Dortmund, 56, 57, 63, then 95, 96, 2002, and then 11, 12. So they've won it back-to-back times, 3 times in different eras. Won UEFA Cup Winners' Cup in 1966. They have won the Intercontinental Championship in 1997, off the back of that European Cup Champions League win. DFB Pokal, 5 times winners there, most recently in 2021. And they have won the DFL Super Cup 6 times, most recently 2019. Looking at the Signal Iduna Park itself, it was built in 1974. It's a very good stadium in terms of its condition. Its capacity is 81,365, so it's actually bigger than all of the club's stadiums in England. It does have a standing terrace as well as seating, so in certain configurations it will drop off, but it's still a very impressive thing to see the yellow wall do their thing. A quick look at the finances whilst we're on this screen then, and just to throw in the quirk that we always do in these rebuilds. So the overall balance at the club is £15.8 million. They've had a profit and loss on the season of £69 million. Now I think that is a lot to do with Jadon Sancho's transfer to Manchester United, maybe a few other bits of business as well. Looking at the transfer budget, this is where I have to explain we will not be making any transfers in the summer transfer window. That will be turned off. The first deals that we're going to be doing will be in January. So when we jump to the end of the first season, the first deals we will go over are those that happen in the January transfer window. They have a wage budget of £2.3 million, and they're pretty much spending all of it, but that is still a good budget for us to be able to build a squad going forwards. Speaking of squads, let's have a little run through the Borussia Dortmund squad at the start of the game. Starting at the top of the list, we have 2 goalkeepers. We have Alexander Meyer and Gregor Kobel. Kobel is 24 years old. He recently represented his national team at the World Cup in real life. I think he's the same base to build around at the age of 24. I think he's going to get a little bit better, but if he doesn't, we have a solid base between the sticks for which we can build upon. We have Mats Hummels. He's obviously a club legend. Did have a period at Bayern Munich, but I think the fans have kind of forgiven him for that. He's back wearing the yellow and black, and I think his stats speak for himself. Even if he is getting to the end of his career at the age of 33, probably get a couple of years out of him in the save. We have Niklas Süle. He's another player, played for Bayern Munich, ended up going to Borussia Dortmund. I think the fans will learn to love him. 26 years old, so we're going to get some time out of him. And then the other one at the back is Nico Schlotterbeck, 22 years old, and this is another one who will be a staple of the save, I am sure. Him and the goalkeeper forming a partnership at the back of the formation. You have Thomas Meunier. He's a player who's been at the club, a bit of an elder player, so one that may want to move on if we are just going to be buying elite youth talents. We have Mathieu Mori. He's a player who came from Barcelona. I think he's from Barcelona's academy. 22 years old now. Probably hasn't hit the heights of what Borussia Dortmund think he would be at this stage of his career. Nothing really exceptional stands off the page, but everything is good. I think he's a solid right back who can play some games, but we probably can sign slightly better. We have Emre Can, obviously former Liverpool, Juventus, Bayer Leverkusen player, ended up at Dortmund, slotted right in there, and is a staple of the team once again. We have Rafael Guerrero, Marius Wolf, Nico Schultz, Felix Paslak. Then we have Mr. Jude Bellingham. Now, as I said, I think he's going to be a key player in this save. The first thing we're going to look to do is get rid of that nasty release clause. £88 million is not enough for Jude, and if we can hopefully get rid of that straight away, we'll be happy going towards the end of the first season. Not a lot really needs to be said about him. He is elite and he will continue to get better and better and better. Salih Özcan, Mo Dahoud. We have Gio Reyna, obviously another of those players that Dortmund spotted quite early, coming from the NYCFC Academy, New York City in America. They snapped him up and they have developed his talent. I think he's going to get better. 19 years old. There is a lot still to come from Gio Reyna. We have Thorgan Hazard, who is Eden's brother, obviously, but made a name for himself in his own right, representing Belgium alongside his brother. I think he's a solid option, but we could probably do better. He's 29 years old now, so I've got a feeling that he could be one that moves on. We've got Julian Brandt, another player who has been at Dortmund for a little while. He's bounced around Germany a little bit, Wolfsburg, Bayer Leverkusen, finally at Dortmund. Still 26 years old. He's a player that we can slot into a tactic, and I think he will do really, really well. We got Jamie Bino Gittins. He's the one who was at the end of the list of talent, and I think he's the next one that will step forward. 17 years old. A lot of development still to come from him, but looking at him, pace of 16, acceleration of 17 is fantastic. We have then got Karim Adeyemi. Where else do we need to go in terms of wonder kids? Absolutely brilliant that they managed to get their hands on him from Salzburg. Yeah, he's only going one direction. He's going to go to the top of world football, especially in terms of FM23. We have Daniel Malen, who is another player that was brought in from Holland, Marco Reus, Anthony Modeste, Sebastian Haller. Now, obviously, sad story about Sebastian Haller in real life. Wish him all the best. A little bit sad that he's literally just got his move from Ajax and then everything happened. But in-game, nothing has happened so far. So he's a player that we're going to look to utilise at the top of the pitch, and one that hopefully can teach our wonder kid, Mr. Makoko, how to get about life at the age of 17. If we look in our dev centre, you can see that we have a number of prospects to promote. So Tom Roth, Filippo Mane, Namdi Collins, Prince Anning, and Sumaila Koulibaly. We have a strong under-19 squad and an average squad in terms of our second team. A quick look at our squad planner reveals some of the strengths and weaknesses in the team, but first let's run through what our assistant thinks is our best 11. So it's Kobel in goal, Guerrero, Sula, Hummels, Mounier, then it's Salih Ozcan, Emre Can, Jude Bellingham, Marco Reus, Hazard, and Adeyemi up top. In terms of the strengths and weaknesses, youth prospects, Marcel Lotka, Tom Roth and Prince Anning already at the club. Aerial reach, corners, finishing, penalties, player partnerships between Bellingham and Can, player partnership between Guerrero and Hazard, and then free kick taking, defensive depth, and the defence in general. There are a few others there, but we won't run through them all. In terms of weaknesses and things that we can look to improve, the squad tend to lack good heading, positioning, jumping reach, transfer budget. Obviously it says 0, but that is because we have that first transfer window turned off. Overall depth, not a great deal of quality of depth outside of the first team, so obviously we're going to need to build for the future. We're going to need to bring quite a lot of players in to give us that depth once all the players start to develop. Marking, defensive depth, tackling, rushing out tendency for the goalkeepers, natural fitness, and the wage budget. If we look at the other version of the best 11, which also gives off where our best youth prospects are, it's Kobel, Guerrero, Sula, Hummels, Mounier, Can, Ozcan, and Bellingham. Reus, Hazard, and Daniel Malen gets the nod up top. Looking at the youngsters, though, we've got Abro in goal, Kabar, Mane, Schlotterbeck, Mori, Waltz, Korzionets, Kamara, Bino Gittins, Naufu is out on loan, and Makoko up top. So I think it's a strong enough team. I think with the youth that they've got at the club already and the players that they're developing, I think we need 1 or 2 new faces. Obviously, we're not going to get a lot of money initially, so we might have to start looking at what players we can move out. The transfer window being shut means that we can't find out what we can do until we get there, which is obviously an interesting thing. And it also means that any players that we move on, we're going to need to replace pretty quickly. So that is pretty much all of the roundup done for Borussia Dortmund. They are a fantastic team, and this is a fantastic prospect in terms of a team to manage. Looking forward to using all of the youth players that we can get. And remember, we are only going to be signing youth players to try and improve Borussia Dortmund. So we have now jumped forwards to the end of the first season. The date is the 1st of June 2023. And as I said, that first season is now in the books. So as always, we're going to give a complete rundown of everything that's happened in the first season. But we're going to start off with the transfers. Now, as always, it's interesting to see what happens because we have that first transfer window turned off, which means that we don't have any influence in the summer. The transfers that you see from those months are transfers that happen in real life. Now, when we take over, we obviously move forwards to the winter transfer window. Showed you the finances a little bit, £15 million. It meant that once we got to January, we only actually had £2 million in the bank, which was okay. We went out and we were looking at a few players for that kind of money, but it quickly became apparent that we'd probably have to sell to buy. And that's exactly what ended up happening. If we move over to the right-hand side and start off with the players that have left the club first, the first big name to go was on the 5th of January, and it was Julian Brandt. Now, this was a player I did not want to lose. I did not want him to leave. But obviously, Bayern Munich came sniffing around. It came to the point where he wanted a new contract at one point. We offered him the contract. He then wouldn't negotiate the contract even though he wanted it because Bayern Munich was sniffing around, and when Bayern actually put the money on the table, he just absolutely down tools, didn't want to be at the club, wanted to leave, and we just granted the wish. It got to the point where I should have negotiated probably a little bit harder, probably should have pushed them for a bit more money, but £16.5 million is probably more valuable to me now than keeping an unhappy player and trying to convince him that his long-term future at the club and just let him walk away on a free transfer anyway. So he ended up leaving. He went to Bayern Munich, 16.5 rising to 20. It wasn't the best deal in the world, but I was glad to have a bit of cash at the club. The next player to go out was Prince Anning. He went to Kiel on loan. Samuel Bamba went to St. Pauli on loan. And Michael Eberwein went to Heidenheim on loan. We then lost Nico Schultz. He's another one. He was kind of unhappy at the club, wasn't getting the game time that he wanted, asked to move on. Lokomotiv Moscow came and put £900,000 down, and again we just kind of took the money. I could have negotiated this one a bit further too. He's a good utility player, which is why I like the player. Can play anywhere on the left hand side, could also be a makeshift right hand side player, and could also play a couple of positions through the middle. But at the age of 30, he's probably one of the players that would have been replaced long term anyway, so we allowed that deal to go through. And the last player to leave out on loan was Jaden Braff, going to Heidenheim on loan. So as I said, transfer window, we only had January to work with, and we initially didn't have the cash, but once we got up and running, we started to sign some players. The first player that we ended up signing was Scott Robertson. Now in real life, Borussia Dortmund have got this knack of coming to England and spotting academy players, picking them up and developing them into much better players. Normally to sell on for a profit, but they have started to keep some of their youth prospects, and that's exactly what we thought we would do here. I know that they've got some Barcelona academy players. They've also been to Italy, and they've got a few Italians on the books at the club too. But we just set the scouts out to go and find players that fitted that kind of profile, and the first name that popped up was Scott Robertson. He was on a scouting report. He was actually quite cheap, probably not the best of the players that we could have gone and got, but you can see here that he has good passing, good technique, he has good work rate, teamwork, vision. Determination of 12 is a little bit low, probably could have done with being a bit better, but for the price that we were paying, it was one of those where I think even if we move him on later on and we've given him a bit of development, we could probably still make some money back. So Scott Robertson was the first name to come into the club. The next one was Shay Charles. Now, Borussia Dortmund have been to Manchester City before. They picked up Jadon Sancho from there. It's kind of a path that I wanted to follow, and Shay Charles fitted the bill of what we wanted. He's a player who is very similar to Jude Bellingham, can play as an out-and-out defender, but he can play as the holder, he can play as a central midfielder, can also play as a right-back, so he has a few good bows to his arrows. Tackling of 14, passing of 14, marking of 12, position 15, work rate of 13, jumping reach is good. Pace could do with being a bit better, and acceleration could be a bit better, but I think that he fits all of the attributes that we need. He's 6'2", 12 stone 1, so he can move around the pitch, he's mobile, and I really do think we can develop him in the middle of the park. And also for the price that we paid, which was just 925,000 rising to 1.1 million, it could turn out to be a long-term investment. Then, once we received the Julian Brandt money, we signed a few players trying to get serious. So the first one that we went and signed, we signed two from the same club. We signed Timothy Pembele. We got him from PSG for £4.9 million. I think he's going to be a fantastic player. 20 years old, French, plays on the right-hand side of defence. Everything that you need, good pace, good acceleration. You can see his agility and stamina are already improving. His off the ball is improving, but he has good technique, tackling, marking, passing, first touch, and crossing. So that's a pretty decent signing for the money that we got from Julian Brandt. The other player that we ended up signing was Andreas Skelderup. Now, he's a player that obviously needs no introduction. He's one of the true wonder kids in FM23, and I'll be honest, this is the first time that I've signed the player. I really do think that if all the hype is correct, we've got an absolutely fantastic deal. He's already worth 31 to 39 million pounds. We actually only paid 7.75, rising to 9 million pounds. Everything is there that you need. He's a wide left player with good pace, good acceleration, first touch, dribbling, finishing a 13, passing, technique. He has good off the ball, determination of 15, anticipation of 16. Absolutely fantastic signing if it comes off. If he comes good, it's going to pay for itself, isn't it? That money we've put as an outlay, he will fit the mould of everything that Borussia Dortmund tried to do in terms of transfers. We've obviously brought him in young and develop him up, paid a reasonable fee. I mean, don't forget, Borussia Dortmund did pay quite a lot of money for Jude Bellingham, but they're going to get that back in masses when they sell him on. Hopefully that's the kind of path that we can get for Andreas Skelderup. It's either going to work and he's going to stay at the club for the full 5 seasons, or somebody bigger is going to come in and they're going to lay out a massive bid, and we're going to have a chance to either take the cash or try and convince him to stay at Borussia Dortmund in the long term. So with the money that we received all being spent on players to improve the squad, the next question is, was it money well spent? And the answer to that question is yes, the money was well spent. We managed to win the Bundesliga at the first time of asking, and we did it quite convincingly. Didn't do too great elsewhere, but definitely in the Bundesliga it was money well spent. If we have a look at the other competitions then, in the Champions League, unfortunately we were knocked out in the group stage. We were put in a group that contained Liverpool, PSG, ourselves and Rangers. Fortunately only scoring 4 points and not being able to make it through to the latter rounds. However, we did get put in the Europa League, and we didn't do too great there either. We got knocked out in the round of 16 by Fenerbahce. And in the DFB Pokal, we were knocked out in the third round by Köln. So in terms of knockout competitions, we really have work to do. In terms of leagues, though, let's break down the Bundesliga for you and show you exactly what happened. If we go to the stages and the league table, you can see that we finished up champions. We played 34 games. We won 27 of them. We drew 2. We did lose 5. We scored 86 goals. We conceded 34. Had a goal difference of 52. And got 83 points in our first season. We won the title by 11 points from Bayer Leverkusen. Bayern Munich did not have the greatest of seasons. They had 9 draws, 7 losses. Only scored 68. Conceded 36, only had a goal difference of 32, and they finished 20 points behind us. So pretty chuffed that even if we don't win another league title in the entire save, we have beaten Bayern Munich, our nearest rivals, who bought one of our best players, by 20 points. If we look at the profile page then and go back to the league table first, you can see we didn't actually feature on the highest goal scorers. If we click on the goals, we had Karim Adeyemi scoring 14 goals, Daniel Malen getting 13, and we had Rafael Guerreiro down here on 9. So in the first season, Yusuf Moukoko didn't manage to make that big of an impact. Looking at the average rating, 7.44 for Malen, 7.38 for Adeyemi. We had Guerreiro with 10 assists. Player of the Match awards, let's see where our highest player was. So it was Moukoko. Despite not getting on the score sheet too often, he did get 4 Player of the Match awards, and Malen also getting 4 Player of the Match awards there too. In terms of clean sheets, let's have a little look at where Kobel is. He got 12 clean sheets, so not a bad season. He just missed out on the top 4 here, with 14 being at the bottom. Yellow cards, 13 for Salih Ozcan, so not terrible in terms of the discipline. I think we have had a decent enough return in terms of staying out of the book. Distance covered per 90 minutes. Mathieu Mori is our best player there, 14.86 kilometres. Tackles per 90 minutes, our best player isn't even on the list, so not a category we will be dominating. Dribbles per 90 minutes is another one where we actually don't have anybody on the list, which is quite strange considering we do play a formation with 2 wide players. So A fantastic first season. If we go through the schedule as well and just show you some of the results that we did have, try and highlight some of the games. So we had a 5-1 victory against Leverkusen to start the season, and we had some pretty crazy games. We beat Bochum 4-0. We did lose to PSG 4-0. We went on a run of games where we didn't win too many here. Wolfsburg and Borussia Mönchengladbach both beat us by 3-0 and 3-1. Then we had that break for the World Cup, plus Bundesliga have a little bit of a winter break still off the back of that. We then had some impressive wins against Freiburg 4-0, Hertha 5-0, where we beat Betis 2-0 in the Europa League. We had a run of games towards the end of the season where we just absolutely dominated and finished off in style. So all in all, we had some impressive results. I mean, here's a 4-1 against Leipzig. We had a 3-1 against Schalke. We drew 2-2 with Bayern Munich. And then towards the end of the season, we had a 5-1 win against Borussia Mönchengladbach, where Daniel Mahlen scored all 5 goals in a single game. And we beat Mainz 3-1 there also. So that's how the table ended up. We played 34, won 27, got 83 points. It's a fantastic first season of the rebuild. Off the back of winning the Bundesliga, then let's have a little look at the finances at the club. So the club has an overall balance now of £44.2 million. We have £13.6 million in the bank. Our wage budget is 2.4 and we are spending £2.2 million. So absolutely sound in terms of the finances. In the first season, we did have a crossover point where we started to lose a bit of money. As you can see, April 2023, the club were in the red. However, winning the Bundesliga and being in the Champions League and the Europa League helped pull that money back. And come the end of the season, once the prize money's all been given out and we have got all of the money back in, we actually end the season not looking too bad in terms of the finances. Let's have a quick overview of the club vision tab then. So our job security is secure. Actionable objectives: work within the wage budget, we're on course. Increase the commercial revenue, reserving judgment. Sign players to sell for a profit. Now that's one that I said earlier on that we will look to do, although hopefully we can start to keep some of those players. Grow the club's reputation. I think that we are doing that. Minimum 4-year contracts for first team players. I wouldn't offer them any less really. Apart from Hummels and Rouse, we had to renew their contracts, but they would only get 2 years at tops. In terms of the 5-year plan, they want to reach the knockout stages of the Champions League and qualify for the Champions League for next season. They want to work towards becoming the most reputable team in Germany. Looking at the board feedback compiled by Hans-Joachim Watzke, who is our general manager. To summarise, the board are pleased with your management of the team. Last season's success remains fresh in our memories. Our appraisal takes that into account. So the board culture is play attacking football, delighted. Develop players using the club's youth system. Now, we're going to have a bit of a mix of this because obviously I want to sign some of the best wonder kids to help push Dortmund forwards. They want to sign players to sell for a profit, but they also want to use the youth system. So I'm hoping we're going to have some gems in our youth academy, the likes of Tom Roth, Prince Anning. There was a few others that are in there that really look like we could promote them from within and hopefully one day start to add them into the first team and get them some real first team football. But I'm not too sure yet what's going to happen. If the money stays around 13 million and we're signing 1 or 2 wonder kids every year, it might be that those youth team players get a bit more game time. If the money starts to go up, then it's obviously going to be that we're probably going to be buying players, but we could still integrate them into the youth system first and bring them on later on. They also want to play entertaining football. They are pleased with that. Notable highlights: very pleased with a 3-1 victory over Wolfsburg, delighted with the positive atmosphere in the changing room, pleased with the comprehensive 5-1 Bundesliga triumph against Borussia Mönchengladbach, disappointed about a 1-0 loss to Stuttgart. Looking at the supporters, overall, B-. Develop players using the club's youth system. They're reserving the judgment. Play attacking football. Sign German players, disappointed. Now, obviously, Dortmund do sign some German players, but it tends to be experienced German players. I don't really want to do that. I want to sign youth players. And they don't really sign youth players from other teams. They kind of are the provider. So it's going to be a little bit difficult to hit that one. I'm hoping that doesn't stay there for the long term, but hey-ho. Play high-tempo pressing football, reserving judgment. Finish above Schalke in the league, delighted. Qualify for the UEFA Champions League, the reserving judgment. Notable highlights: pleased with the 3-1 Bundesliga victory against Wolfsburg, delighted with Mokoko's recent performances, delighted with Daniel Malen's recent performances, disappointed about a 1-0 loss to Stuttgart, disappointed with Shea Charles's recent performances, disappointed with Anthony Modeste's recent performances. The final thing then to run over at the end of the first season is the best 11. Now obviously there are two versions of this. We're going to start off with this one here that just says Scout Report Best 11. Basically run through them, have a little look at the strengths and weaknesses before switching to the other version and then going over where we are and where we might need to improve looking at the future. So it's now saying that Kobel is our best goalkeeper, Roth, Hummels, Sula and Mounier are our best back four. Emre Can, Salih Ozcan and Jude Bellingham are the best three midfielders, with Rouse, Hazard and Adeyemi. So the players that we signed haven't managed to crack the first team yet. I think Timothy Pembele is going to be an absolutely fantastic player going forwards, and I do think that some of the players that we are going to look to develop will get into the first team sooner rather than later. But it's understandable that our staff want the experienced players in those roles. Looking at the strengths and weaknesses then, so best player form is Daniel Malen, 7.84 in his last 5 matches. Youth prospects including Filippo Mane, Julian Rykhoff and Raul Koenig. They're all at the club. The team in general are impressive dribblers and often threaten when running with the ball. Finishing, technique, acceleration. Top goal scorer, Karim Adeyemi's 14 strikes, ranking 6th in the competition. Kobel is one of 3 good options in goal. Sula is the best of 7 good options available to play at right back. Defensive strength and defensive depth seem to be good for the team. Looking at the weaknesses, natural fitness. Clearly lacks natural fitness, so maybe that's one to look at in terms of our staff. Maybe start putting them through their paces or looking to replace some of the players who are not naturally fit. Overall depth is still an issue outside of the first team. One-on-ones, positioning, long throws, rushing out tendency for goalkeepers. Midfield depth could do with more depth in the midfield. Marking, command of area, anticipation, reflexes, teamwork and determination, which is quite strange because we were a determined bunch at the start of the save. If we switch to the other one, the best 11 then, so we've got Gregor Kobel in goal, Roth, Hummel, Sula, Mori at right back, Emre Can, Ozcan, Bellingham, we've got Marco Reus, Hazard and Karim Adeyemi. And then the youth players are Abro, Kabar, Rahman, Schlotterbeck, Rashidi, Korsnietz, Waltz, Kamara, Skelderup, Nauf and Makoko. So it's interesting to see both Makoko and Skelderup are on the purple version of the best 11. Sebastian Gepper is our assistant manager, so he obviously rates those two. Schlotterbeck also playing as a purple player at the moment is one who is going to be pushed forwards, I'm pretty sure, in season 2. Looking at it, I think it's one of those where we're going to have to go season by season to see where the strengths and weaknesses are and try and address players where we can buy for the right type of player. Now obviously the criteria is to sign under 21s who are going to either be able to be developed or they're going to be able to go straight into the first team. Once we lose certain players like Marco Reus and Mats Hummels, we're going to have to find those players quite quickly, because if they're young, if they're like 17, 18, they're going to have a couple of seasons whilst those first teamers are there, and then once they're gone, they're going to have to step in and maybe replace some of the club legends. So it's going to be a bit of a balancing act to try and get this exactly right, but I think we can spot some weaknesses in the team. Obviously right wing, we've now got left wing covered with Skelderup. We need a central midfielder. Shea Charles has come in, he's still not ready, he's developing though, coming from Manchester City, so that was a decent signing. But I do think we lack a bit of depth in the middle of the park, so if we could go out and sign maybe a wonder kid in the middle of the park, that would help us at the club. And then we've got Hummels, Sula, we have also got Schlotterbeck. They can all play as centre-backs. I think maybe we're a bit light at left-back and right-back, so maybe that's something that we're going to look at. But Pembele coming in at right-back is a big, big signing for us. So that is the first season complete. We have won the Bundesliga, as you can see, 83 points, winning it by 11, smashing Bayern Munich completely out of the park. Can we continue that form in season 2? Here we go. We have pushed forwards. It's the 1st of June 2024, and that means that Season 2 is now in the history books. As always, we're going to kick things off with the transfers. I'm going to show you everything that happened for us in the 23-24 transfer market. We have had players leave the club. We have also gone out and spent money to replace them. So we're going to start off on the right hand side and show you the players that have left first. The first player that left the club was Rafael Guerreiro. We got in a bit of a contract standoff with him. Kept offering him contracts. He was knocking them back. There was interest in him from other clubs. Couldn't sell him on for a cash value, but he agreed a deal with PSG in January to move to them in the summer. And that is the one that happened first. A bit unfortunate for him to move on when he did. 30 years old, he was quite experienced, he was decent all up and down the left-hand side of the pitch, so it's going to be difficult to go out and replace a player like that, but we will give it a go. We also let Anthony Modeste leave on a free transfer. 36-year-old striker has gone to Lyon, one that he has decent enough stats for what you would probably need him for, but he doesn't fit in with the ethos of what we're doing at the club, so he was allowed to move on. We didn't renew his contract. We let Thomas Meunier go out on loan to Rayo Vallecano. He was a player who was just basically being disruptive, wouldn't agree to a contract because he was upset, he was unhappy, wanted to leave. Nobody would pay the money, so we let him go out on loan. Jaden Braff went to St. Pauli on loan. I think that's the second season in a row. We let Mathieu Morey go to Santos Laguna for £2 million. Probably could have got a bit more money for him, but it was another one of those where we just kind of wanted the cash. Even though he's a Barcelona academy prospect, I don't think he's one of the better ones that have come out of that academy. The money came in, we took the money. It was an okay deal at the time. The next one to leave was Marius Wolf, another right back. So we kind of shed ourselves at right back. But if you remember, we signed Pembele. We did get £9 million for him, which I think is a fair amount of money. 29 years old now. Obviously could play anywhere on the right or the left, so his versatility was good for me. His pace and acceleration was also decent. But when Southampton come in with the money, we just kind of took it as it was a good deal. The next one to leave was Daniel Milan. Now, I'll be honest, this transfer actually caused quite a bit of a stir amongst the fans. It kind of divided an opinion. £30 million, I think, was a perfectly acceptable amount of money to spend. I had a clear vision of what I wanted to do in terms of the rebuild. Marlon was a player. He's 25 years old. He's probably not going to get any better, whereas we could go out and try and sign players to develop, hopefully get better players for the money that he brought in. So he's now a Juventus player. We had Colbein Big Ear Finson go out on loan to Dynamo Dresden. Raul Koenig went to Hanover on loan. Sebastian Haller went out to Fortuna Dusseldorf on loan. And Vasco Waltz went to Paderborn on loan. So we recouped £42.5 million and we went and spent 97. Starting off the spending spree was Jesus Diaz. He's Luis Diaz from Liverpool's younger brother. Plays an attacking midfielder on the right. Can also play on the left. Also play as a makeshift striker. Now, the stats seem to all be declining, but I do think he's actually developing, as daft as that sounds. He hasn't really got much game time, but we have made him available for our junior teams, both the second team and the under-19s. At the age of 20, still has some developing to do, but we managed to get him from Porto for a fair price. Paid $625,000, rising to $725,000. I think it's a really good deal. The next player to come in was Ben Grist, another one who we have tried to follow the path of going to England, picking up some of their youth players. This is one that appears on a few Wonder Kid lists out there. Obviously 19 years old, was playing for Leicester City. They have a good youth academy and can bring players through. The price itself wasn't too bad, £1.1 million. It's one of those where I think if we can get a bit of development out of him and sell him on for double the amount, it's obviously a smart move. It hits one of those club vision criterias. I think it was a sensible move. We then started needing first teamers, so we went and bought Victor Christiansen. He's a 21-year-old left back. He is Danish. I think he's going to be an absolute gem. He's another one that I've seen mentioned in a few Wonder Kid lists. Stamina, pace, acceleration. His tackling's good. I think he can establish himself quite quickly as a first teamer at the club. And I think he's one of the types of players who could probably go anywhere and break into first teams. The next player we signed was Al Chadil Bitshabu. French, 19 years old, centre-back. Comes in really to learn from the likes of Hummels and Sula, and then you can play alongside Schlotterbeck in future years. Has everything that you need from a player. 6'6", bit of a unit in terms of 15 stone, but he can really put himself about. He's got pace of only 11, acceleration of 10. Hopefully the other stats are all going to fill in eventually, and I think he's a sound signing anyway. Picked up a few free transfers that were released. Yannick Frischlad was the first one. You can see he's there in a Red Bull Leipzig kit. Didn't really bring him in to break the first team, but he's an option if we need a cup striker or if we need a player who we can develop and once again sell on. So you can see we picked him up for nothing. He's higher ended at £550,000, which means that if we can just get that £550,000, it's literally turning a freebie into something, and that is another thing that Dortmund seem to do quite well. And then we signed Ibrahim Digberaku. I've signed him on a previous save. I think it was the Arsenal save, so I know he can develop. Only 19 years old. He's Belgian. He, again, 6'2", 13 stone, a big unit, pace of 13, acceleration of 11, free transfer. It's one of those. It's a bit of a no-brainer. We then, in the January transfer window, went back and spent some more money at Manchester City. We signed Luis Fiorini. He starts the game off on loan at Blackpool in the first season. He's now 22 years old and Scottish, but obviously when we picked him up he was just 21. Sound in terms of what he is as a player. Whether he's going to get any better or not, I'm not too sure, but we're hoping it's one of those kinds of players where you can pick them up, develop them and move them on, signing the players for a profit. Signing for £3.7 million. Might be difficult to recoup it, but hopefully we'll have a good go at trying to get some of that money back. Joe Hugill was the next player to sign, pretty much like the other striker, Fierschlau. He's not going to be a first teamer, but he's going to be a player who can come in for cup games and we can kind of throw him in. Comes from Manchester United's academy, finishing a 14, pace of 13, acceleration of 11. Probably could do with being a little bit more rounded in his stats, but I think he has quite a good amount of potential, so it was worth the deal for £250,000. The next one we signed was Brian Broby. Now, we have heard the name Brian Broby for a couple of years on Football Manager. He's now 22 years old, but again, was 21 when we signed him. Comes from Ajax. Absolutely sound as a player, finishing a 14, pace of 13, acceleration of 14, strength of 17. He just gives us something different to Yusufa Moukoko at the top of the pitch, a bit stronger, a bit more direct. I think he's a player that really can do well at the club. Finding him first team games might be a little bit difficult though. The next player was Isaac Johannesson, another one, a 21-year-old Icelandic wonder kid. Seen pop up in these kinds of saves all the time, but what isn't there to like about him? Pace of 16, acceleration of 14, passing of 15, determination of 16, work rate, vision, it's all there. This is an absolute steal of a transfer. £15 million for Isaac Johansson. He's either going to develop into one of the best players in the game and has to leave, or he's going to stay at the club and he's going to win trophies for us. Speaking of winning trophies, the next player is certainly going to do that too. And we signed that elite central midfielder that we were talking about at the end of the first episode. We went and bought Gavi. I couldn't believe he was available from Barcelona. We ended up paying £53 million for him. Absolute steal. Still 19 years old. Did have to put him on £200,000 a week, which was a bit above what I wanted. But look at the returns already. If we was to sell him right now, £129 million is the upper value. Could double our money almost straight away. But we're going to aim to keep him at the club because he's still developing and still getting even better as a footballer. Technique of 16, vision of 16, determination 17, decision 16. He has good pace for a midfielder, 13, acceleration of 14. He can slot in alongside Jude Bellingham, Emre Can, and our midfield looks a lot more secure when we have those three certainly in those slots. The fact we've got Gavi, who is 19, and Jude Bellingham, who is around the same age, in the same team is absolutely fantastic. So that is all the transfer business that we have done. As I said, we had £42.5 million come in. We did end up spending £97 million overall. The club did get a little financial boost at the January transfer window. Out of nowhere, we had £30 million to spend from the board, which was quite a nice addition, because in the summer we only had £13 million, and it meant then that with the money that we brought in, we were able to turn it over and spend wisely. But the big question, as always, is was it wisely spent? How did we do, and how did the players fit in? Let's have a look at the competitions tab and see if it was money well spent. So the quick answer to that question is yes, it was money well spent once again, as we have retained our Bundesliga title. Just like Borussia Dortmund do in real life, when one comes, two come together, and we have won them back to back. So it's 23 or 24 that's going to show on the list. We managed to do it by 10 points from Bayern Munich, which is quite impressive once again. They have closed that gap to us though. It was 20 last season. They have now closed it to 10. But we are still champions of Germany. Looking at the other competitions, the Champions League final hasn't played yet. But if we click on that, you can see we're not in it. But we also didn't play in the Europa League. So that means that when we look at the group stages and look at all groups, you can see that we managed to qualify from our group in Group C. We had a group that included Benfica, Villarreal and Copenhagen, which is quite funny because we signed Christiansen from them. Also, I think Johansson come from there, so they ended up playing against their former team. But we qualified with 6 games played, 4 games won, didn't draw, lost 2, had a goal difference of 11 and managed to get 12 points. You can see Adeyemi gets 3 Man of the Match awards down there. From the group stage, we went into the round of 16, where we came up against Real Madrid, and unfortunately that is where our Champions League journey ended. We lost 5-4 on aggregate to Real Madrid. So back to the DFB Pokal, we ended up winning that, so we have done a domestic double. We beat Borussia Mönchengladbach in an absolutely insane game where we won 6-4 in the final. You can see Karim Adeyemi got 4 goals in a cup final, Sula and Bellingham getting the other goals, and it was absolutely mental. But we come out on the right side of it, so it's another trophy to add to the list that we have won. And speaking of trophies that we won at the start of the season, we won the Super Cup, the DFL Super Cup, by beating Schalke, which is one of the teams that our fans want us to finish above. So I'm presuming that we really pleased them on the day that we won that. So let's look at the Bundesliga in a bit more depth then. If we go to the overview and go to the stages tab, hit the league table and mess it up completely, sort it back the way it should be. You can see we played 34, we won 26, we drew 4, we lost 4, scored an impressive 102 goals, conceded 41, 61 goal difference and 82 points. So we scored the most goals in the league. However, we did concede the most goals in the top 4. Yeah, a little bit disappointing that our defence wasn't a bit more solid. But when you're scoring 102 goals and conceding 41, it doesn't really make a difference, especially when you've won 26 out of 34 games and end on 82 points. If we look at the profile page for the competition then, bring the league table back up too, you can see that this season Yusufa Moukoko really took that step forward, scoring 29 league goals. Karim Adeyemi finished on 22. You can see Yusufa Moukoko, 8.09 average rating, Adeyemi 7.88. Jude Bellingham, 7.30 average rating. You've got Marco Reus getting 15 assists and Adeyemi getting 13. Moukoko with 9 Player of the Match awards and Adeyemi with 7. Clean sheets, let's have a little look at where Kobol is. He managed to get 10 across the season, obviously conceding 41, not many there. Tim Roth, 15.5 kilometres covered per 90 minutes. So all in all, a fantastic season. Champions League, we got out the group stages, which was required of us. We didn't go into the Europa League this time, but we didn't progress past the round of 16. Won the DFB Pokal and won the DFL Super Cup. So either a big trophy double or a minor trophy added on for a treble in Season 2. So after a season where we won a domestic treble, let's have a little look at the finances and what's available to us for Season 3. The overall balance at the club is now £114 million. You can see that dip that we had at the end of the first season in April 2023 did not reoccur. The money is now stabilised and is actually starting to elevate. Looking at the transfer budget, we have £44 million available to us for the third season. Wage budget is £2.5 million. We are spending 2.2. So in terms of the transfer budget, we really now have a good kitty to go out in Season 3 and start picking up those wonder kid players, and also look at developing some of the players that we have already bought in. And if we go out and sign the right wonder kids, we could add on another player like Gavi with his wages. There is enough room in the wage budget there. Let's have a run through then of the club vision page. Job security to start us off is secure now. You can see the dreaded message at the top of the screen. Board alert, takeover in process. Due to the club being in the takeover process, we have altered the 5-year plan. Until the situation has been resolved, we will hold off with setting long-term plans. So we're going to run through it still. Board vision, club's long-term visions and expectations. So they want to work within the wage budget. We're doing that. Sign players to sell for a profit. I think we're going to achieve that. Grow the club's reputation. They're pleased with that, obviously, with us now becoming two-time Bundesliga champions back-to-back, and also going down the path of buying and selling players that are going to bring us to the fore. I think we're going to be able to do that with no problems. Informational objectives, minimum 4-year contracts for the first team players. We are still doing that. For next season, they want us to reach the knockout stage of the Champions League, qualify for the Champions League through the league. They also want us to continue working towards becoming the most reputable team in Germany. Looking at the board then, the board feedback is a B+. The board culture, play attacking football, delighted. Develop players using the club's youth system, delighted. Play entertaining football, very pleased. Play possession football and play high tempo football are added on, and they're reserving judgment for both of them. In terms of notable highlights from the board, delighted with the positive atmosphere in the changing room. Very pleased with the 3-2 Bundesliga win over Mönchengladbach. Pleased with the 6-4 DFB Pokal win against Mönchengladbach. Criticisms, they have nothing to criticise at this stage. Let's see if the supporters are the same. So the supporters give us a B+. They want to develop players using the club youth system, delighted. Play attacking football, delighted. Sign German players, this is still one in Season 2 that is disappointing the fans. Play high tempo pressing football, delighted. Play entertaining football, reserving judgment. Finish above Schalke in the league, delighted. Qualify for the Champions League, reserving judgment. So they are pleased with the 3-2 Bundesliga win over Mönchengladbach, delighted with Adeyemi's recent performances, and delighted with Rainer's recent performances. And once again, the fans have nothing to criticise of the manager. To round us off on Season 2 then, we're going to look at the best 11. We're going to start off with the first of two different versions by looking at the Scout Report best 11. And you can see that there are a few changes now in our best 11. Kobel is the goalkeeper. Christiansen, Schlotterbeck, Sula and Pembele are our back four. We have Emre Can, Ozcan and Bellingham as a midfield three. Skelderup, Hazard and Adeyemi are our front three. A little bit surprised Hazard possibly could get pushed out. Me personally, I think that the best lineup that we could have is Adeyemi on the right, Makoko up top, and then obviously Gavi should be in that lineup. I would take Ozcan out, maybe move Bellingham as the deep player and put Gavi in. I think that is our best three, but hey ho, it's just an opinion. Looking at the strengths and weaknesses of the team then, so top goal scorer, Yusufa Makoko had 29 goals, but doesn't get in the best 11. Best player form, Adeyemi, 8.18 from his last 5 games. Youth prospects, we have Luke Rahman, Charles Herman and Prince Anning at the club, so 3 players to look at in the dev centre. In terms of handling for the goalkeepers, aerial reach, goalkeeper depth, defensive depth and the wage budget are all strengths. There are some others there too. Weaknesses, tackling, long throws, natural fitness, overall depth, marking, penalties, command of area, rushing out tendency, goals against, crossing, heading and off the ball. So the big one there, 25 of the 52 assists conceded in the last 50 matches have come from through balls, which means that obviously our back four are not picking those balls up. If we look at the other version of the report, then the best 11, you can see Gregor Kobel, Christiansen, Schlotterbeck, Sewell, Pembele. Then you've got Emre Can, Ozcan and Bellingham, Skelderup, Hazard and Adeyemi. Looking at the purple players, you've got Zacharias as goalkeeper, Roth, Mane, Bitshiabu, Azizi. You've got Florian Yu, Chidibe, Semestin, Raul Koenig, Nauf and Makoko. So a new couple of names there. I believe the midfield three have all come from the youth intake. Then you've got Bitshiabu, who is one of our signings. Makoko, obviously, I think should be in the first team anyway. So looking at it now, we've got Gavi in. I think he should be in the midfield. I think the midfield three is pretty much sorted. We might need another centre-back. Right wing, I think Hazard should come out and Adeyemi should go in there. So maybe we'll look at another winger or two. And maybe we need to shore up at the top. Although Makoko has started turning into the goal machine that we all know that he is. Right then, that is season 2 complete. We have once again won the Bundesliga. We have won the DFB Pokal and the DFL Super Cup. So a fantastic second season. Here we go then, we have pushed forwards. It's the 1st of June 2025. Season 3 is now in the history books. We have gone through the entire season and we are going to bring you up to speed with everything that's happened. But as always, we're going to kick off with the transfers. We're going to show you the players that have left the club and the players that have arrived as we go off in our quest of getting European glory for Borussia Dortmund. So let's start off as always on the right hand side of the screen and show you the players that have left the club. The first player that left the club in this section of the rebuild is Sebastian Haller, a player that I wasn't utilising really with Makoko and Brian Broby coming to the club. I think it was just one that he kind of got pushed to the side. A little bit difficult to get a 30-year-old in when you want to have a youth development save. So he kind of fell by the wayside. An offer come in, £9.5 million to send him to Napoli was decent enough money. We took that and we moved him on. The next player to leave was Scott Robertson. If you remember Scott, he came in at the start of the save in season 1. Fortunately, couldn't really get him in the first team with signing players like Gavi and already having Jude Bellingham. We allowed him to play for both the under-19s and the second team where he could. Didn't really show signs of development. So we had an offer that came in from Braunschweig, 175,000. So we did take a little hit on him, but it's one of those where the deal was right for both the player and the club. We then sold Almugar Kabar, who is a defender or wing back on the left hand side. Hadn't really broken into the first team, only 19 years old. Probably one that we should have had a little look at and tried to convinced to stay at the club. He did ask to leave, which is disappointing at the age of 19. Obviously would have liked to have kept that type of player and I probably should have fought harder to keep him, but we took the £170,000. I don't know whether he was going to get in ahead of Christensen anyway, so it was one of those where we kind of had to take the money or just kind of try and keep the player against his will, and we didn't do that. We just allowed him to move. The next player to leave the club was Namdi Collins, but he went to Hoffenheim for £2.8 million. Player that wasn't getting into the first team. We'd already signed a few players. Although he is one for the future, 21 years old, I just allowed him to leave the club because I thought he isn't going to be getting in. We need to actively try and refresh the squad as much as we can. The right kind of money came in, 2.8 million, felt right at the time, so we took that and did that deal. Next player to leave was Mo Dahoud. He kind of got disillusioned with the fact that Gavi was at the club, Bellingham was ahead of him, Emre Can was in there. We have some good midfield options. Another one, kind of kicked off, wanted to play more games, have more playing time. Couldn't really give it to him, so we allowed him to move to Wolfsburg. Did recoup £15.5 million for him, so that I think was a good deal. We lost a youth teamer, Gökdezin Gurpuz, to Red Bull Leipzig for 84,000. Mounier went out on went to Spartak Moscow, on a permanent deal. Finally allowed him to leave the club. 33 years old, wasn't getting any game time, been out on loan for the previous couple of seasons, so he finally leaves. Florian Yu is the player who went out on loan to Magdeburg. He's a player that is a youth prospect, came in 17 years old. I think he's going to have a really bright future. Plays through the middle of the park. It's going to be interesting to see what he can do playing for a adult team, because he's only played for the under-19s. So going out, getting that loan experience, I think next season he might be a candidate to break out into the first team. We then allowed Thorgan Hazard to leave, going to Napoli for £7 million. 32 years old now. Again, it's one of those catch-22s where you need experienced players at the club, but when you're trying to have a youth development save, you really want to move these types of players on. So when the right money came in at £7 million, we allowed him to leave. And then Luis Fiorini, who was a signing from last season, he has gone out on loan to Reading. So all in all, we recouped £35 million, but we spent 70 on the left-hand side. And the first player to come in this season was Luis Guilherme. He is a attacking player who is a Brazilian. Comes from Palmeiras, which is a bit of a wonder kid factory. Plays on the right, the left, through the middle, so we like the versatility. 19 years old. Has played 11 times for the under-20 Brazilian national team, scoring 6 goals. I think he's a player that could develop quite nicely, and we're either going to develop him and keep him at the club, or this is a candidate, I think, to fit the bill of develop and sell on for a profit. I just have a feeling that he's a good player, but he won't get to be an excellent player, whereas we can just kind of buy him, develop him, and then sell him on, which is what Dortmund do. The next player we signed was Tanguy Nianzou. Bought him in from Seville. Sound player. Another reason why Namdi Collins was allowed to leave, because the quality of player that we're bringing into the club is far better than the ones that are leaving. True wonder kid, 22 years old now, although he was 21 when we signed him. £200,000 a week is an absolute amazing amount of money for a player who's 22 years old, but that's what he wanted and that's what it took to get him to the club. I think he's going to be a rock at the centre of the defence, especially if he's learning from players like Hummels and Rouse. We then went and signed Rooney Abaji. Now this is a player, if you watched my Coventry City rebuild, went and signed Rooney Abaji. He was absolutely fantastic. This kid could be one of the most under the radar wonder kids. I don't remember seeing him on too many of these flash videos that you see about these kinds of players. He's just absolutely fantastic. And once again, Copenhagen have had 3 wonder kids that we have gone in and cherry picked from them. And I think he will be a brilliant player to the end of the save. The next player we went and bought was Liam Delap, going back to Manchester City, giving them some more cash, following the Jadon Sancho path. Yeah, this one, he's a little bit further down the path than the likes of Sancho and some of the players we bought already from Man City, but it's a sound purchase, £20 million. Can play on the wide left, can play as a striker. I think he's going to be a great rotation option for Makoko, Broby and Rouse and Skelder up on the left-hand side. I think we can just work them in cup games, league games, wherever he needs game time, we will try and get him in. But I think he's a sound signing. And then in January, we went out and we bought the wonder kid that everybody wants, Endrick. Couldn't really just leave him there for Real Madrid to go and buy, could I? So went out, spent the money, bought him to Germany, 18 years old still. Going to try and develop him really nicely. Can bring him in slowly, mix him in again with the likes of Delap, Skelder up on the right hand side with Bargy. We've got Makoko up top. We've got Adeyemi. He's going to be one of those types of players that really gets in and amongst the real wonder kids. And then finally, we signed Alberto Moliero, £15 million for Molero. He's a sound investment, I think. 21-year-old Spaniard. Again, a tricky player. Can play wide left, can play wide right, can play through the middle. Of the versatility of the player. He has some great stats in terms of his vision, his flair. His work rate could do with a bit of improving at 12, but the technique, the dribbling, the first touch, another true wonder kid. And Las Palmas in Canary Islands really do know how to churn these players out because they have a great reputation for it. So that is the transfer dealings done. £35 million recouped, £70 million spent. And as always, the big question is, Was the money well spent? And the answer once again is yes, the money was well spent. Once again, we've retained our Bundesliga title. That is 3 in a row now. Although we didn't score as many points as we did last season. 82 last term, 74 this term. So we have fallen away a little bit. Champions League, we have progressed further than we had before. I did say we wanted to have an assault on this competition. We have managed to get to the final and we've got agonisingly close. We are runners-up in the Champions League. DFB Pokal, we were knocked out in the second round by Hoffenheim, which is a little bit of a strange one, but we didn't play well on the day. We deserved to lose the game, so no complaints there. And the DFL Super Cup, we have won that once again. So let's kick off by showing you the Super Cup. We beat Bayern Munich 4-2 in that. DFB Pokal, as I said, knocked out in the second round. Champions League, unfortunately, we lost to Manchester City in the final. If we go through the new improved Champions League, if that's what you think, we finished in 18th in the league format, played 8, won 4, drew none, lost 4, had a goal difference of 4, and we had 12 points. Karim Adeyemi got 17 goals in the Champions League, got 5 Man of the Match awards. Emre Can and Christiansen getting 18 yellow cards between them, and Nauf 14.81 kilometres. From the league phase, we went into the knockout round, where we played against Sociedad. We beat them 5-3 on aggregate. The round of 16, we got drawn against Chelsea. We beat them 3-2 on aggregate. Quarters, we played against Milan. A 4-2 aggregate scoreline got us through into the semi-final, where we faced off against Ajax. Beat them 8-5 on aggregate. And that left us in the final with Manchester City, where we unfortunately lost 2-1. So getting closer and closer to the dream of replicating 1997. But unfortunately for us, not this time. However, finishing in the final qualifies us for the FIFA Club World Cup, which is a competition which on this game I think is broken. We'll find out in the next episode how we get on in that, because it doesn't start for another 18 days. That leaves us with the Bundesliga to break down. Let's go in as always and show you the stages page. If we go to the league table, you can see we have played 34 games. We won 25. We drew 5. We lost 6. Scored 85 goals. Conceded 34. Had a goal difference of 51. And we had 74 points. We won the league by 5 points from Frankfurt. Borussia Mönchengladbach were behind them. And 7 points further back down the line was Bayern Munich, who for some reason didn't fire at all season. We had a good campaign. A little bit disappointed that we finished on a lot less points than we did last season, but it was enough to win us the league, so I'm not going to complain at all. If we go into the profile page for the league and go to the league table, we can see that Karim Adeyemi scored 29 league goals. Now, Karim Adeyemi needs a shout out because he has had a fantastic season. 26 games, 29 goals in the Bundesliga. Overall, 43 games, 52 goals. He was on a 7.71 average rating in the league, 7.80 overall. One of the best single seasons that you are going to see from a Dortmund player, I am sure. Average rating, 7.71 for Adeyemi. Assists, 10 for Reina, 10 for Gavi. Player of the Match awards, 8 for Karim Adeyemi. Clean sheets, Kobel getting 12 of those. We have Emre Can on 13 yellow cards, so his discipline is quite poor. He was on the list in both the Champions League and the Bundesliga. So it's been an absolute joy of a season. Again, winning the Bundesliga, finishing runners-up in the Champions League and winning the DFL Super Cup. So whether you consider that a major trophy or not, it's either a double or it's a major trophy and a minor trophy, and that Champions League run was absolute gold. We also have the FIFA Club World Cup, and as I said, that will be in the next episode, as technically it takes place in the next season, even though we've qualified for it in this one. Off the back of another fantastic season then, let's have a little look at the finances. You can see that we have really put Dortmund now in a strong position. Overall balance at the club is £223 million. Our transfer budget for the next season is £42.9 million. Our wage budget is 2.8. We're only spending £2.2 million. So the finances are really coming together well. Like I said, that dip in the 2023 April, not too sure why it happened or what happened there, but since then we are only on the climb. The club's overall balance is being fantastic, and luckily for us, that takeover that was in season 2 didn't happen, so we still have the same board, and it means that we are still progressing nicely in the way that they would want us to. A quick run through of the club vision tab shows that we are now untouchable. Our job security reading untouchable is fantastic. As I said, that takeover bid has gone. It didn't go through, which means that we still have the same board. And in terms of our actionable objectives, work within the wage budget, we're on course. Sign players to sell for a profit. They're disappointed because we're not selling enough players. Obviously, we are buying to retain as well as develop, but we're not really turning them over. So the board are disappointed about that now. Grow the club's reputation. They are pleased because we have obviously just reached the Champions League final. We have also won the Bundesliga now 3 times in a row. So the eyes of the world are really going to be on Dortmund, and that is good for that. Informational objectives, minimum 4-year contracts for first team players. We are still doing that. So the 5-year plan then, looking forwards, they wanted us to be competitive in the Champions League. We passed that. Reached the knockout stages of the Club World Cup. So because that competition is there, we still haven't clicked over to the 25-26 season, and they're reserving judgment on that. Qualify for the Champions League, we passed. Challenge for the DFB Pokal, we failed because we were knocked out early on, and be competitive in the Super Cup. If we go forwards to that next season, they just want to become recognised as the best of the rest. A little bit strange, we're 3 times Bundesliga champions now, just got to a Champions League final, but they want to be best of the rest. That's fine. Looking at the board feedback then, A+ from the board. They want to play attacking football, they are pleased. Develop players using the club's youth system, delighted. Play entertaining football, pleased. Play possession football, pleased. Play high tempo pressing football, very pleased. In terms of notable highlights, pleased that the team won the Bundesliga, pleased that the team reached the final of the Champions League, delighted with the positive atmosphere in the changing room, disappointed about a 1-1 draw with Munch and Gladbach, disappointed that the team only reached the second round of the DFB Pokal. Disappointed about the Champions League final defeat against Man City. Now, obviously, you're going to be disappointed. If your team gets that far, you want to win it. Unfortunately, we couldn't get over the line. In terms of the supporters there, they're not as generous. They only give us a B-. Sport culture really shows why. They want to develop players using the club's youth system. They're delighted. Play attacking football, pleased. Sign German players is still one. Cannot hit because we're not signing enough experienced players, and the youngsters that are coming into the club are from other countries, so that one probably is never going to be hit. Play high tempo pressing football, delighted. Play entertaining football, pleased. Finish above Schalke in the league. Qualify for the Champions League, all good. Notable highlights, pleased with the 8-5 victory over Ajax in the Champions League semi-final. Delighted with Adeyemi's recent performances. Delighted to clinch a Bundesliga instead of achieving the previously outlined objective. They're disappointed about the 2-1 Champions League final defeat. Again, I would be too. Disappointed with Victor Christiansen's recent performances. Disappointed about a 1-1 draw with Munch and Gladbach. So it seems Munch and Gladbach are a team that we are closely paired with. They crop up every single time that we don't beat them on this criticisms list. But overall, we're doing a good job, and I think we'll take the A+ and the B- as we move forwards. Before we wrap up Season 3, let's have a little look at our best 11s. So obviously 2 different versions of this. The first one is the Scout Report Best 11 that gives us a few strengths and weaknesses. We'll also have a look at the other version before we wrap up. So looking at this version then, they have gone with Kobel in goal, Christiansen, Sula, Schlotterbeck and Pembele as the back 4. Gavi, Emre Can and Bellingham as our midfield 3, which is exactly what I predicted it should be. Gio Reyna on the wide left, Bargi on the wide right, and Karim Adeyemi through the middle. No problems with that whatsoever. I think that is a sensible team. Gio Reyna and Skelderup can be interchanged on the left-hand side. Obviously, there's different combinations of players that you can put in the attacking options because we have now a vast amount of attacking talent. Looking at the strengths and the weaknesses, aerial reach for the goalkeepers. Top goal scorer Karim Adeyemi got 29. He was also in fantastic form, getting a 7.82 from his last 5 matches. Wage budget, plenty of room with £650,000 available to spend. Youth prospects, we have Luke Rahman, Charles Herman and William Rashidi. Dribbling, finishing, through balls, keeper depth, defensive depth. We have a good squad and it's really just getting better and better all the time. Weaknesses, marking, tackling, positioning, teamwork, overall depth, command of area, long throws. Player struggling for form. Victor Christiansen has struggled for form, 6.48 in his last 5 matches. Might be a little bit of lack of competition there has just allowed him to slack off. We will be talking to him about that and hopefully that starts to pick up in the next season. Work rate, some players don't seem to want to work hard. Obviously that is probably going to be down to training. Going to have to try and knock that mentality into them or out of them and start them to work harder. Natural fitness, lacks natural fitness. Goals against, 17 of 45 conceded have been from through balls. So it's something that is still there despite changing some of the players at the back. It's still not being addressed. The midfield also is a lot better, so I'd hope that some of those balls were being cut out, but still that is why we look at this page to try and develop. Looking at the other best 11 then, it says now Kobul in goal, Christiansen, Sula, Schlotterbeck, Pembele, Gavi, Chan and Bellingham, Reina, Bargi and Adeyemi up top. Looking at the purple players, Abro, Broth, Biatshabu, Nianzu, Azizi, Yu, Johansson, Semestin, you got Nauf, Molero and Endrick. So really strong coming through. I don't know why it's saying we have a lack of depth, because if you look, we've got Molero wonder kid, Endrick wonder kid, Johansson wonder kid, Biatshabu wonder kid, Nianzu wonder kid. Once these players all start to fully develop and reach an age where they're going to be considered as adult players maybe, we're going to have insane depth, and I really think that we're building something special. The way we got to the Champions League final was fantastic. Unfortunately couldn't beat Manchester City. Whilst Erling Haaland's there, not a lot of teams are going to be beating Manchester City, but obviously managing Dortmund, you know all about Erling Haaland. Yeah, I think the team's really going in the right direction. Can't see many weaknesses. Maybe if Christensen's not working hard, he may need to be looked at and see if we can either sign a replacement that will work harder, or if maybe it's a lack of competition. Goalkeeper's still sound. Midfield is absolutely perfect. So I think from here on in, we are looking for those players who are really going to advance us. We have gone out and really bought the bulk of what we need now, I think. The other thing that I forgot to mention was that both Hummels and Rouse retired at the end of this season, I think. So in terms of replacing them as leaders in the dressing room, that is going to be something that we're going to need to look at as well when we need players to step up. Obviously the goalkeeper, Sula, Schlotterbeck are players, but also Jude Bellingham and Gavi, even though he's young, I think he's still an influential player, and I think they're players that are going to drive the club forwards. So let's kick off the Season 4 review by looking at some transfers. We have jumped forwards to the 2nd of June 2026, and that means Season 4 is in the books. And as always, we have had some players that have left the club and players that have arrived at the club. So we're going to run through some of those before we move any further. Starting off on the right-hand side of the screen. As always, we're going to go through the players that have left the club before showing you the players that have come in. So let's start off by looking at who left the club. Now, we didn't do too much business in terms of letting players leave on permanent deals. We did have some loan players leave the club. We had Vasco Waltz go to Paderborn on a loan. We had Uberhorn go to Arminia Belfield on a loan also. Julian Rijkoff, the young Dutch striker, has gone to Regensburg on loan. We've got Luis Farini has gone back to England to play for Reading on loan. One that I thought, basically, if we look at him, he's not developing as I thought he might. A little bit disappointing really to say. He came in from Manchester City, looked like he had a pathway to being a decent player, but he's kind of stalled. His career hasn't progressed as much as we want. Wouldn't mind selling him back to England on a permanent deal, but in the short term he has headed out on loan. He has ended up at Reading for the season. We then sold Ben Grist. He was another player that I thought we could bring in and develop. Unfortunately, didn't really give him the game time that he needed. Still only 21 years old, but another one that didn't develop as we would have liked. Also made him available for the reserve teams, and he also had a stint playing with the under-19s as well, but he just wasn't progressing as we thought he would. Ended up taking a bit of a hit on him as we allowed him to join Brighton's under-21s for 75,000. The next player to go out on a permanent deal was Heiko Salasus. We're going to go with that. He's a regen that has come through. He's 19 years old. Didn't really have too much potential according to our scouts when he was coming through, or should I say our youth team staff when he was coming through and signed for the club. But he has started to develop in his own little way. He has now gone out to Cologne. Don't think he was going to make it through into our first team, and he has left the club for 195,000, rising to 275,000. We then had Bashkim Azizi go to Karlsruhe on loan, and also Stanko Savic has gone to Regensburg with Julian Rykhoff on loan. So let's look at what transfers we did. Now, bearing in mind we are now Bundesliga triple champions. We have won the last 3 years. We're looking to defend our crown. We also now want to kick on and try and win the Champions League. So the players that we have brought in to try and help us do that, the first of which is João Veloso. He's a player who has come to us from Portugal. He was formerly at Benfica. 20 years old, valued at 56 to 75 million pounds. You can see he's an absolutely wonderful footballer. Very much one for the future also. I'll be honest, he didn't really get the game time that we wanted to give him in terms of the first team, considering the price tag, but he is still a developmental player. I mean, you can see down here he's a squad player that could still improve, but he certainly is one that further down the line I think will get his chance sooner rather than later. The next player we signed was Bence Dardé. He is a attacking midfielder, can play wide left, play wide right, can play through the centre. That's the type of player that we really like, ones that have got a bit of versatility about them. 20 years old, German player, so he helps fill some quotas as well. Scouts put him up as a decent signing. You can see at the bottom he's an exciting young prospect who isn't far from first team level, so we've already put him in the first team to try and get him some experience for this season. I think he's a player that could develop quite nicely as the game goes on. The next player we signed was Livano Comencia. He's a 22-year-old Dutch player. He was 21 when we signed him at the start of the season. It says he might not have the required ability, but it's not really about that at his age. Coming from young PSV, we needed a player who's a bit of versatility in terms of playing both left and right back. He's one that can step in for cup games, and he's a rotation option when the squad has injuries or suspensions. Don't really think he's going to progress much more than he is, but still he's a player who can play both sides, can also move into defensive midfield, so I thought he was a good purchase. Quite cheap, £4.5 million. It weren't really going to dent the old transfer kitty, but it's a deal that I think was quite sensible. And then we moved into the regen territory. One of the first players we signed as a regen is Geronimo Prado. He is a defender centre. He has come to us from Penarol in Uruguay. He's Uruguayan, 18 years old, valued at 4.3 to 5.4 million pounds. He's an exciting young prospect who isn't far from the first team. However, we have tried to get him game time as much as possible to try and give him the best chance to get into the first team. Now, obviously, we wanted to do this with youth players. We're going to get to a certain stage in the game where all of the under-21s that we want to sign in real life are getting to that age where it's 22, 23 and we can't go out and buy them. There are a few deals that are nearly had in place for players that were just under that under-21s, but didn't work out, and then when we come back to sign them, they'd already passed the 21-year-old. So we've got deals like this done. I mean, it doesn't look very impressive, all these down arrows here, but I can tell you he's actually improving across the season. Yeah, I think he's a player very much for the future, and I think he's got a big say in what's going to happen in our defence for the next couple of seasons. And then finally, we went out and splashed the money on wonder kid Warren Zaire-Emery. He has come to us from Paris Saint-Germain. He played 200 games at PSG 2, 7 goals scored in that time. Also, whilst he was at PSG, he played 7 games for them. He's everything that we need, really. He's rotation option for Bellingham and Gavi, can play in amongst them. He's obviously a player who's going to develop. Again, another one that says is an exciting young prospect who isn't far from the first team. Valued at 69 to 92 million pounds. It wasn't too difficult to get him away from PSG, which was a little bit unnerving because I thought they would have wanted to hold on to him as much as they can, whether it's about development or game time or whether PSG just wanted to get the money back. I'm not too sure, but he's a player that came in, and when we called upon him, he played some pretty good football. I think he's one again that he's going to develop, and now we have three midfielders who can interchange positions, and they're all around the age of 21. I think we've got Bellingham, Gavi and Zaire Emery, who I think might all be under the age of 21, but they're all around that age bracket, and they really are going to be able to mesh together, and I think we're going to have a really, really strong midfield going forward. So that is all the transfer dealings that we have done. As you can see on the right hand side of the screen, we did not recoup a lot of money in this transfer window, only £325,000 coming back into the club, but the board did back us by giving us £85 million to spend, and we went and spent the absolute lot. I mean, the Veloso deal goes up to 36.5, so there is a little bit of add-ons there, and then Dardai going up to 2.8 from 2.8, which doesn't make sense, but I think there's a few clauses in there as well. Livano Comansia 4.5, Prado 4 million, and Zaire Emery 45 million pounds. So I think it's money well spent. It's just a case of, as always, does the £85 million outlay translate into results? And the answer to that question is yes, the outlay did end up bringing us success. All of the money that we went out and spent was absolutely worth it, as we had the first season where we have won 4 trophies. Yes, we have been crowned Bundesliga champions once again. We have won the Champions League, the DFB Pokal and the DFL Super Cup. So absolutely fantastic. We have won every competition that we have taken part in. So let's have a little look at the DFL Super Cup first. We can show you that we beat Bayern Munich in the curtain raiser for the season. Beat them 1-0 with a goal from Karim Adeyemi, Gavi with the assist, and our players winning the game obviously had the best average ratings in the game. In the DFB Pokal, let's go back and have a little look through some of the rounds. So in the second round, we were paired off against Hannover 96. We managed to beat them comprehensively 4-1. In the third round, we were paired up with Bayer Leverkusen. We beat them 2-0. In the quarterfinals of the competition, we were paired up with Hertha Berlin. We swept them aside by winning 1-0. In the semi-finals, we beat Frankfurt 3-0. And then in the final, we beat Mainz 4-2 to collect the DFB Pokal. You can see Karim Adeyemi got 12 goals in the competition. Gio Reyna with 6 assists, Johansson with 5 assists, and Bellingham with 4. Player of the Match awards, 2 of them went to Karim Adeyemi. Kobel getting 4 clean sheets in the competition. Sula did collect 3 yellow cards, but overall, fantastic way to win the DFB Pokal. And that leaves us to move on to the last two, the big two, the Champions League. If we start off by running you all the way back to the league phase, I mean, I know you can see there who we have beaten in the final, but we started off in fantastic form. We qualified in 6th place in the league format, where we played 8 games. We won 6 of them. We drew 1. We only lost 1, and that was to Porto 4-0, which was a bit of an outlier. We had a 10-goal difference, and we ended up with 19 points, convincingly going through into the next phase. Into the knockout phase, we didn't need that because we qualified in the top portion. In the round of 16, we were paired off against Atletico Madrid. We ended up beating them 5-1 to advance through to the quarterfinals. In the quarterfinals, we were drawn against Juventus. We beat them 4-3 on aggregate. In the semi-finals, we were paired off against Chelsea and we beat them 4-2 on aggregate. And in the final, we came up against the mighty Barcelona and we beat them 2-1. Now, looking at some of the stats for this competition, you can see that in terms of goals, we didn't have a great goal scorer. Adeyemi did get 11, but he was 8 short of Erling Haaland. And when you come up against Erling Haaland, it's not very fair, is it? Average ratings, again, Haaland led the way in that, but Adeyemi got 7.58 for ourselves. Assists, Anthony led the way for Manchester United, and we didn't actually have a player that features in the top selection of assisters. Adeyemi got 5 Player of the Match awards. In terms of clean sheets, let's see where Kobel ranked. So he's down here with 4 clean sheets in the competition. Sally Ozcan getting 8 yellow cards. Now they've got 14.43 kilometres covered per 90 minutes, which is quite impressive. And that rounds off a successful Champions League campaign. Absolutely fantastic to be able to replicate the team of 1997, bringing a second Champions League back to Dortmund. And then finally, let's show you how we cruise to another Bundesliga title. If we go to the league and show you everything that happened there, you can see that we played 34 games. We won 26 of them. We drew 3. We lost 5. Scored 101 goals on the season. Conceded 38. Had a goal difference of 63, had 81 points. And we won the league by 11 points from Bayern Munich and a lot more to the teams behind. So again, comprehensive winners of the Bundesliga. We played some fantastic football across the season, and it's all highlighted by the fact that you can see Karim Adeyemi managed to get himself 24 league goals and was the top scorer in the league. He also had a 7.42 average rating, and he was the top average rater in the league. Giovanni Reina getting himself a 7.39 average rating. Gavi managed to bag himself 11 assists across the season. Player of the Match award, Šeško led the way, but you had Reina on 4. Do we have anybody else? Bargi on 3, and Karim Adeyemi getting 3 also. Clean sheets, Kobel 16 across the season, which is not too bad considering we conceded, I think it was 38 goals. He still ended up on 16 clean sheets. We had Nyanzu getting 13 bookings, and then let's see, do we have anybody distance covered? So Nauf with 15.03, Pembele down there with 14.5, and Johannesson with 14.33. In terms of tackles per 90 minutes, did we have anybody in that category? We didn't. And in terms of dribbles per 90 minutes, we didn't have anybody there either. So all in all, a fantastic way to win another Bundesliga, and a fantastic way to end season 4. It's been brilliant to bring this team so far. To get 4 competitions in a single season really is some achievement when you win certainly the big 3 that you can win in the Bundesliga, the Champions League and DFB Pokal, and to kick the season off fantastic. We really just did not look back after winning that competition. Let's have a quick run through then of the finances to show you where we are standing heading into season 5. As you saw, we had an outlay of £85 million in the previous season, only bought £325,000 in. It means that in the bank we have actually £262 million. That's probably what happens when you win the Bundesliga 4 times on the bounce, and now you start bringing Champions League winnings in as well. Of that £262 million, we're getting £59.5 million to spend for the final season. We have a wage budget of £2.9 million available and 2.5 being spent, so there is a massive gap there in terms of what we are going to be able to use to attract the kind of players that we want. In terms of the Champions League, financial fair play is on course for that, and again, at the start of the save, when we had that one dip in April of 2023, those money concerns really have not materialised. Everything now is heading in the right direction. We did make a small loss on the month, but in terms of the season, £49 million profit, £89 million last season. The club is going in exactly the way that we wanted it, and luckily for us, there is some more money to spend to strengthen the squad. Let's have a little look at the club vision tab then. So our job security is very secure. In terms of the actionable objectives, work within the wage budget on course. Grow the club's reputation. They are delighted. Obviously winning the Champions League is going to aid that. Maintain the club's status as the most reputable team in Germany. We're on course for that. Minimum 4-year contracts for first team players. They're not judging. And then next season now, they want to reach the latter stage of the Champions League once again. Win the Bundesliga once again. They want the youth facilities improvement to be complete. Work towards becoming the most reputable team in Europe, and work to become the most reputable team in the world. Now, if you remember at the very start of the save, I said that Dortmund are probably one of the most famous teams, certainly in Germany, maybe Europe, but now they want world domination. And I think if we go out and win Champions League in the next season, they really would be on course to go and start making a big stir in worldwide football. Looking at the board and the board feedback, so we get an A- for our success. Not too sure what we could have done more to have got anything better, like 4 trophies gone through the season, absolutely destroying some teams. There were a few questionable results, but there's nothing in terms of criticisms. But if we run through these, the board culture is play attacking football, delighted. Develop players using the club's youth system, very pleased. Play entertaining football, very pleased. Play possession football, pleased. Play high tempo pressing football, delighted. Make the most of set pieces, pleased. In terms of the highlights, pleased with a 3-2 victory against Bayern, pleased with the 4-2 final against Mainz, and pleased with the 2-1 Champions League victory over Barcelona. If we look at the supporters, let's see if that mirrors the board. So A- as well. Now obviously there is one big glaring thing we could improve here, but I keep explaining it's difficult to do that. We are signing a few German youth players, but it's not enough to appease the fans. But the supporter culture, develop the club using the youth system, they're delighted. Play attacking football, delighted. Sign those German players is the one that disappointed. Play our tempo pressing football, delighted. Play entertaining football, pleased. Make the most of set pieces, pleased. Maintain the club's status as the most reputable team in Germany, on course. Then they want to finish above Schalke. We do that every year anyway. Get the better of Bayern Munich. We're starting to get on top in that battle, and they want to win the Bundesliga again next season. And again, the highlights: 3-2 victory against Bayern. Delighted with Rainer's performances and delighted with Adeyemi's recent performances. Karim Adeyemi absolutely deserves a shout out. He's been absolutely fantastic. I mean, if we just throw him up a second and go to his history tab, you can see he's scoring goals for fun. 20 goals, 29, 24. He's just getting better and better, and I think this kid is an absolute must keep at the club, especially if you're managing Dortmund like I am. You have to make sure that that contract is watertight. We are running into a few issues with him. I think he's starting to outgrow the club, but luckily for us, he's contractually bound to us to the next season, so I don't think we're going to have too many issues with keeping him, certainly for the last season of the save. Speaking of the last season of the save, then let's go and have a look at what our finishing starting 11 was from season 4. Running through both versions of the squad planner as always, you can see that this version is the scout report with the best 11, and it starts off with Kobel in goal, Christiansen, Schlotterbeck, Sula and Nauf at right back, which is strange. I thought he was more of an attacking player, but okay, I would personally put Pembele in there. You've got Gavi, Emre Can, Jude Bellingham, so again you've got players that can come in. You've got Zaire Emery, we've got Johannesson. Can mix and match those players. We have a really good squad depth in terms of that area of the pitch. On the left, you've got Gio Reyna, but again, you could have Skelder up. You've got Malera on the right. Again, Adeyemi could play there, and then you could have Makoko up top. But this version of the best 11 thinks Adeyemi is our best striker, and Makoko can't get in the team. Looking at the strengths, top goal scorer, Adeyemi, 24 strikes, leads anyone else in the competition. He's been in fantastic form with a 7.7 in his last 5 matches. Number of talented youth prospects, including Luke Rahman, Charles Herman and William Rashidi. Dribbling, finishing, flair, agility, through balls. 51 of a total 117 assists in the last 50 matches have come in that manner. Sula is one of good 6 options at right back. We have good defensive depth, good defence. Everything is going well in terms of the strength on that side. In terms of the weaknesses, we do have issues with marking, tackling, which is a bit strange considering if you look at our back 4, if you was to take Nauf out, which I do firmly believe he's a right midfielder / winger, but it could probably improve there. But other than that, I think we're actually decent at tackling. Kicking amongst the goalkeepers, positioning in the goalkeepers, goalkeeper depth. I think basically these weaknesses are all set up against goalkeepers. If your goalkeeper's just not fantastic, then you're going to find the weaknesses are singling out your goalkeeper. But hey-ho, we're not going to be changing the goalkeeper for the final season. Command of area, one-on-ones, teamwork, work rate is something. Players still don't want to seem to work hard. We did up the training, slightly tweaked it to try and get a bit more out of them, but nothing really happening there. It's still a weakness. However, weaknesses winning 4 trophies. Lack of competitive aggression and players struggling for form. Geronimo Prado has struggled for form recently, so he's a young player coming to Germany from Uruguay, so he's always going to take time to adapt. So no real worries in terms of that. In the other best 11, so the squad planner, so Sebastian Gepper is our assistant manager. You can see he's got Kobel in goal, Christiansen, Schlotterbeck, Sula and Nauf, Gavi, Emre Can and Bellingham, Reyna, Malero and Adeyemi up top. Looking at the purple players, which are the next gen that is going to come through. So we've got Kirsch in goal, Roth, Prado, Nyanzu, Azizi at right back, Semestin, Raymond and Warren Zaire Emery in the middle, Skelder up, Bargi and Endrick up top. So I think really in terms of both versions of this, Rooney Bargi is really unlucky not to get in. I think him and Malero are really similar players. Bargy has been fantastic when he did play. Skelderup obviously the same with Gio Reyna, and it's really good to have that depth in and around the squad. I mean, we've got Hendrick, who is probably the best wonder kid in FM23, can't get a game at the moment because of both Adeyemi, Makoko, and then himself. So it's been fantastic building this squad. It really has kind of been a gathering of wonder kids. When you do a youth save, sometimes don't know how it's going to turn out, whether you can attract those types of players. Obviously, Dortmund having that track record of picking up players, developing them, has really helped us, and that is exactly what we are doing, and it's all building up to a fantastic 5th season of the save. Here we go then, we have pushed forwards. The day is the 1st of June 2027. That means that the final season is now in the history books. We have completed the rebuild. As always, we're going to start off by looking at the transfer activity that happened across the 2 transfer windows in the season. And already you might be guessing by looking above me, we didn't actually do that much transfer business. When you've won 4 trophies, it's difficult really to go out and improve the squad with wholesale changes. But we did let a few players go. So we're going to start off on the right hand side of the screen. The first one is Luis Guilherme. He has left the club to go to Red Bull Leipzig. Now, I didn't really want him to stay in the division. Kind of was trying to push him to a few other clubs in Spain. I think somebody from maybe Ukraine had come in for him, or maybe Russia. But he wanted to go to Red Bull Leipzig. That was the deal that he took. He was competing for a place with the likes of Adeyemi, Bino Gittins, Skelderup, Bargy. Also wasn't going to get a game as a striker because of the likes of Adeyemi, Makoko, and Hendrick. He just wasn't really going to get in. I don't think that he also developed as good, as well as we would have liked. The development wasn't really there. So when Leipzig come in, he's still only 21 years old, so there is still development to come out of him, and Leipzig might be able to get it, but I don't think we were the club for him to develop at in the long term anyway. And then finally, Soumala Koulibaly has gone out on loan to Real Mallorca. He's a big, strong, imposing defender who is going to be a first teamer somewhere down the line. But at this moment in time, we couldn't get him in with our current crop of centre-backs. So we allowed him to go and get one final year of experience, really, before he was thrust into the first team, which obviously will happen once we leave the club. On the other side, though, we did spend quite a bit of money. Again, you can see we have splashed out £77 million. And the first of the players that we bought in was a regen. He is Daniel Mendes Alves. He's quite impressive as a central midfielder, can play as a right winger, and also play through the middle of the park as an attacking midfielder. You can see he's a wonder kid, 42 to £50 million, 19 years old, and has come from Corinthians. Has everything that we were looking for in the player. Pace of 13, acceleration of 13 will hopefully improve. Dribbling 17, first touch 17, passing 17, technique 16, off the ball 16, vision 17. This is one impressive wonder kid. I was glad that we were able to go out and get the wonder kid and bring him in to develop for the future. We paid £17.75 million. Something tells me somewhere along the line that is going to be an absolute steal. Now, the next player that we bought in, if you haven't heard this name before, Owen Betrancourt, look him up in your save. He will more than likely start off as one of the clubs in France. You can see he started off here at Lille. I have got a video where I look at youth intake dates, and he was one of the first PSG regens in that video. He's, I believe, a programmer or somebody who is inside SI. He's been in the game now for a couple of years, and I think he's a bit of a hidden Easter egg, and he always comes through and develops quite nicely. Looking at this, you can see he's a 19-year-old striker who can play as an attacking midfielder or a midfielder centre. And looking at him, he played 9 games in the Bundesliga, scored 5 goals for us. Yeah, it's an interesting little nugget of information just to find this player and try and see if he's one of the better wonder kids or one of the better regens that come through. Sometimes he's a wonder kid, sometimes he's not, and then it's trying to see if you can develop him as he goes along. You can see he has everything that you would look for. Pace could be a bit better, acceleration could be a bit better, but 16 finishing, 13 dribbling, 15 first touch, 16 technique. His determination is only 7, so I don't know if he's going to be hard working or not, but he does come with some player traits of tries killer balls often, tries long range free kicks, so he's a player who is a bit adventurous. He also has been called up to represent France. I think that's in the under-20s World Cup. Yep. So you can see that he's obviously an exciting prospect for France in game 2. 2. The last player that we signed then was Tariq Buchman, and now you can see that he's obviously in a Bayern Munich kit there. In the game, he was playing for Bayern's second team, then he was allowed to go to Arminia Bielefeld, played for Hamburg for a couple of seasons, and then we went and picked him up, and I think he's actually a bargain of a player. He's valued now at 106 to 180 million. His media description is an elite centre-back. Everything points to the fact that he's big, strong, can pass the ball, can play out from the back. Look at his physicals: acceleration of 16, pace of 16. You aren't going to get many strikers getting in behind and beating him. 16 strength, 16 positioning, 15 determination, 16 concentration, 16 for heading, 15 jumping reach. This one just absolutely jumped off the page. As soon as the scout report hit, the bid was in and the player was coming to the club. Pair that up with the fact he's now worth what he is. We had to pay £55 million for him, but if Dortmund change their mind in a season or two's time, they've got a player who is now an elite centre-back who is going to be worth £100 million plus. They can double their money to get rid of him. But, once again, the question is, £77 million spent, £3.2 million recoup. Was the £77 million investment worth it? The answer to the question, once again, was yes, it was, but not to the degree that last season bought. You can see we have won the Bundesliga, so 5 times every single season we are winning the Bundesliga. This time winning it from Mönchengladbach, who put up a really good fight against us. Not too sure what's happened to Bayern Munich. They were at 20 points behind. I think they were that amount of points behind in the first season, so maybe they've regressed a little bit, lost 1 or 2 stars. I'm not too sure, but to see them that far down the league is a little bit suspect, but we really don't care when you're winning the league by that amount of points. It's a really, really good season. Champions League, unfortunately, we couldn't defend our Champions League trophy. We got knocked out in the round of 16 by Arsenal. That happens sometimes. The Super Cup, we did win that. We'll come back to that in a second. Got DFB Pokal knocked out in the second round by Darmstadt. So just like the Champions League, disappointment in terms of not being able to defend that. And we didn't even win the Super Cup. If we start off there and show you what happened there. So we lost 2-0 to Bayern Munich in the Super Cup. Not a great start to the season. The DFB Pokal, we lost in the second round. So if we show you that, we lost 3-1 to Darmstadt with a rotated team. UEFA Super Cup, we managed to win that. We beat Milan 4-3 in extra time. Goals from Nauf, Bellingham, Reina. We had Rooney Barge getting an 8.40 average rating. Gavi got 3 assists in the game. Rooney Barge, though, was named as man of the match in that. Then on to the Champions League. If we break that down a little bit too. League phase, you can see we actually qualified in 5th. Played 8 games. We won 6. We drew 1 against Real Sociedad. And we lost 1 to Inter Milan 1-0. We did have a goal difference of 13. We picked up 19 points. And obviously that meant that we would skip the knockout round playoff into the round of 16, where we come up against Arsenal. And we lost on penalties after a 5-5 draw on aggregate. So an absolutely enthralling game, but sometimes it just comes out on the wrong side, and that's exactly what happened. So let's break down the Bundesliga as always, starting off with the stages page. Go into the league table and show you what happened there. So you can see that we won the league comfortably by 11 points. Played 34 games. We won 27 of those games. We drew 3. We lost 4. We had a 93-4. 28 conceded, 65 in the goal difference, and 84 points, finishing 11 ahead of Borussia Mönchengladbach, and as I said, 20 points clear of Bayern Munich in the league. If we go to the profile screen and break this down, you can see Karim Adeyemi wasn't as prolific in this season as he was in the previous. Benjamin Šeško led the way in goals. If we have a look, we've got Makoko coming into his own now, 18 goals there. Adeyemi still did score 15 goals, and Malero creeping in at the bottom with 12. If we go to average ratings, you've got Makoko on 7.68, Bargi on 7.44. Assists, Bargi with 14, Reina with 11. Bargi getting 6 Player of the Match awards. Kobel kept 15 clean sheets. Luckily, nobody really in terms of the discipline issues, so that was a nice change. Distance cover per 90 minutes. Let's see if we had anybody in there. So Nauf covering 14.63 kilometres there. Tackles per 90 minutes. Did we have anybody creep into this category? No, we didn't. And in terms of the dribbles per 90 minutes, we didn't have anybody there either. So overall, the final season of the Save was a successful one. We still managed to win 2 competitions, the Bundesliga and the Super Cup. Disappointed about the DFB Pokal, disappointed about the Champions League, but we kind of ticked that one off. Not saying that I wasn't trying to win it again, because I 100% was, but yeah, I'm glad that we'd already ticked that box. And then the DFL Super Cup at the start of the season doesn't really mean too much to many people, but obviously if you're a Dortmund fan or a Bayern Munich fan, it would have meant something on that day, and I really would have liked to have started the season off on the right foot by winning that competition. Let's have a quick look at the finances and what we will be handing the club over looking like. So there would be £281 million in the bank, which is fantastic. £67.7 million for the next manager to spend if he wishes. And the wage budget is £3.2 million and we're spending 2.8, and that means that there is a massive gap there if the new manager wants to go out and bring in some world stars, or if he changes the philosophy and wants to offload somebody, he's going to get a whole world of money to play with. Club's finances are in such a better state now than what they were when we took over. Obviously having a little bit of money and then them giving us some money to spend, and then working our way now into being a giant of world football. Looking at the profit and loss, they made absolutely no money the past month, but across the season they made £24 million, and last season £43 million. We leave the club on course to qualify for the financial fair play for the Champions League also. Let's have a quick look at the club vision page. You can see our job security is secure, so we would be leaving the job in a secure role. In terms of the actionable objectives, working within the wage budget, on course. Grow the club's reputation, delighted. Maintain the club's status as the most reputable team in Germany, they are on course. Minimum 4-year contracts for first team players. So the new manager will be expected to reach the latter stages of the Champions League, qualify for the Champions League. My contract would be up for renewal at the end of next season anyway. They want to work towards becoming the most reputable team in Europe and working towards becoming the most reputable team in the world still. Looking at the board, we get a B- for the season. Obviously, they are more disappointed about the DFB Pokal exit than I am. But looking at the board cultures, playing attacking football, they're delighted. Develop players using the club's youth system, very pleased. Play entertaining football, very pleased. Play possession football, pleased. Play high tempo pressing football, delighted. And make the most of set pieces, satisfied. They are pleased with the quality of pressing on display using the Gegenpress, pleased with the level of support in the squad, and pleased with the 2-0 Bundesliga victory over Bayer Leverkusen. We look at the supporters, how have they fared? A B-, so develop players using the club's youth system, delighted. Play attacking football, delighted. Sign German players, they're now satisfied. I think that was because we signed the big defender at the back. Play high tempo pressing football, delighted. Play entertaining football, pleased. Make the most of set pieces, satisfied. In terms of supporter expectations, they want to remain as the most reputable club in Germany, on course. Finish above Schalke in the league, we do that all the time anyway. Finish above Bayern in the league, we did that by 20 points this season, and qualify for the Champions League. They were delighted with Mokoko's recent performances, and Melero's recent performances, and Brainer's recent performances, but they're disappointed with Geronimo Prado's recent performances. So once again, the young wonder kid being singled out for criticism by the supporters. Maybe it's something that will change with the next manager. Let's quickly then have a little look at our best 11 as we exit the game. The final best 11 that we would be leaving behind for the new manager. So, the scouting report best 11 reckons it's Kobel in goal, Christiansen, Schlotterbeck, Buchmann and Nauf. Then it's Gavi, Chan and Bellingham, Melero, Bargi and Makoko. A few things to add on in here. I do believe Adeyemi would have featured, but Adeyemi actually turned down multiple contracts in the save. So we did time down for a contract to the end of 2027, but I believe he's going to join Tottenham. That probably might lead to his omission from here as it's looking forwards. But that is a sound enough 11 anyway. And looking at it, there's only Schlotterbeck, Kobel, Bellingham, Chan and Makoko who are in the game. Both at the start of the rebuild and the end. Players like Bargi, Christiansen, Buchmann. In fact, Nauf is out on loan in the first season. He comes back. But again, I wouldn't be playing him as a right back. Pembele would be my right back anyway. But positive development in terms of the team. Players like Gavi joining. It's surprising that Zaire Emery can't even get into this best 11. Makoko coming through and showing his class right at the end of the save too. As you can see, he's been in fantastic form. 7.86 from his last 5 matches. Goalkeeper aerial reach. Coble finally getting a bit of a compliment from the strengths side. Determination is good. Top goal scorer Makoko, 18 goals. Defensive depth is good. Midfield is good. And the wage budget is a positive. Looking at the weaknesses we leave with, questions about the marking still. Overall depth to the first team now. I don't see how that's possible considering we have quite a big squad. Couldn't get everybody game time in the final season. Weren't really moving players on that I could have done in the final 2 seasons. I'm not sure I agree with that. Squad tend to lack good tackling still. Command of area, teamwork, crossing, kicking, long throws, punching tendency and goals against. If we go to the other version then and show you on the pitch, Coble, Christiansen, Schlotterbeck, Buchmann, Nauf, Gavi, Chan, Bellingham, Bargi, Malero and Makoko. So just quickly highlight some of these players then. So Gregor Kobel is now 29 years old. He's been absolutely fantastic throughout the save. We've got Christiansen, who we signed from Copenhagen. Absolutely fantastic. He's developed now into a world-class left-back who I would not hesitate to sign in any save that I play in. Schlotterbeck is another one. Young at the start of the game, 27 now, develops as a outstanding centre-back. Buchmann, after 1 season at the club, he played 31 games, he scored 2 goals. He's going to develop nicely as the time goes on. Nauf, as I said, he's played here as a right-back, but his preferred position is a winger on attack. So I'm not too sure why with 10 tackling he's our best right back. I will show you Pembele's development in just a second. You've got Gavi, who is obviously just Gavi. He's developed into a world star. Emre Can is still at the club. Jude Bellingham now at the age of 23 looks like this. He's fantastic everywhere. We've got Malero, who is a 4.5 star potential ability, 4.5 star current ability. He's probably one of the best players at the club if you go by the star ratings. Fantastic season he has just had. He's played 67 games, scoring 19 goals for the club. You got Rooney Bargi, another one that I will rave about, another one coming from Copenhagen. Fantastic player. I managed to sign him in the Coventry City rebuild and he was fantastic there, and playing in an even bigger team he does even better. He's played 75 games, he scored 16 goals. And then we've got Yusufa Makoko. Here he is at the age of 22, valued at 92 to £102 million. He's absolutely fantastic. He has 74 goals in 114 games by the age of 22, and that is including fighting for a place with Adeyemi at the top of the pitch for most of the save. We also picked up Endrick. He looks like this at the age of 20. He's now valued at 58 to £66 million. Have we got anybody else? Zaire Emery. He's starting to develop nicely. Age of 21, 70 to £89 million. Made 26 first team appearances. I think he will be a brilliant player going forwards. We've got a few regens that are in here. Raul Coney gets a shout here on the left-hand side. If we go to the squad, though, the player that I really do want to shout out is Karim Adeyemi. He has been absolutely fantastic. He is joining Tottenham because we couldn't secure that contract. But he has 102 goals in 124 appearances for Dortmund. He's absolutely elite in this game. If you can get him and prize him away from Dortmund, I would not hesitate to do so. But if we go back to the club info page where it all started, we can show you that we now have another Champions League 2026. Cup Winners' Cup is still there. The Bundesliga titles, 13 now, with 5 of them for ourselves. We have a UEFA Super Cup that we won. We have 7 DFL Pokals. We have still the Intercontinental Championship and 9 DFL Super Cups. So that brings to an end 5 seasons at the Signal Iduna Park. It's been absolutely fantastic. Building this team of Wonder Kids has been such a fun save. If anybody wants to have a go at building a team and just using Wonder Kids, Dortmund are fantastic for it. Obviously, players like Makoko, Bellingham, Adeyemi, they're all there. They're all developing anyway. The likes of Jadon Sancho have passed through. Yeah, they're doing it again with Jamie Bino Gittins. They really are a team that have an eye for this type of talent. They go out, they develop them. They are a fantastic little team. They are brilliant in Germany. Jurgen Klopp really gave them that identity. The yellow wall gives them everything that they need, and they're a fantastic club. I've enjoyed managing them so much in FM23. Right, if you're still with me at this point of the video, firstly, a big thank you for coming through 5 seasons and sticking with it. Secondly, if you haven't hit the like and subscribe button, please consider doing so. It helps the channel so much. The growth on the channel has been insane in the past couple of months. I really cannot thank you all enough. Everybody who's took the time to do that, to help the channel, whether it be a comment, a like, or your subscribe. I know time is precious for everybody, and to give me your time, really do appreciate that. Before you do go though, check out the rest of the channel. There is other things such as Wonder Kids, hints, tips, let's plays. There's something for everybody on the channel, but for this one I'm going to leave it there. Thank you for watching the Borussia Dortmund rebuild. I'll see you on another video soon.